been made vitally by India?
No, but I don't know what concessions everybody is talking about. We'd already struck the deal with them. Obviously, there'll be concessions that were made by India. Well, where is the debate in that? Obviously, every other country has been making concessions to the Americans, so that is not an issue. Secondly, I think we've got a fairly good tariff. Because please remember, we might not have gotten the tariff that the Japs or the Europeans or some of the other countries have got, but a lot of the products in which we are dealing with the Americans, those are not the products that Britain or EU or some of the other countries, the Japanese make. For example, textiles, for example, leather products. Out there, our competitors, we've got a better rate than our competitors, which are Pakistan, Bangladesh, these kind of countries. So I think we are in a sweet spot in that respect. Secondly, yes, we had diversified, we were trying to find new markets, and I don't think we should give up the quest to diversify our markets. I think there will always be a bit of this rankling that, as Ray Locker says, that who knows tomorrow, suddenly he flips a switch and says, okay, fine, I tomorrow instead of 18%, I'm going to charge 36%. But if even if that does not happen, I think it's good that India widens the market. But please, let's not kid ourselves. The American market, as we talk, remains the single most important market for every country in the world, whether we like it or not. And in the sectors that were tariffed at the levels at which they were tariffed, it did not include electronics and some of the other products, Apple and some of the other companies that were supplying to the US. But the products that were tariffed, those industries were suffering grievously. They were bleeding, and the government really had to step in to try and provide some relief to them. So I think, all in all, if you look at what has happened today, I think it's a damn good deal. Second, I think most of the imports that we'll get from the US, energy imports, I have no problem buying energy from the Americans. There are certain agricultural products that we were open to buying from the Americans. On technology, of course, why the hell would I not want American technology? It's top class technology. Whether I will go in for defense equipment from the Americans and what kind of defense equipment I'll go in, that's another question. But general technology imports, US technology is top class. It's world class. Why would I not want to? Why would I want to deny myself US technology and tariff it so high? Because if I buy that US technology, it adds to the competitiveness of my industry. What's wrong with that? So,
Right.
personally, I think let us see what the details are. But I think I'm going to sleep much better tonight because we've got this deal, and I think it does good things for the Indian economy.
Okay, stay on with me. Zach, I think we're being joined by Mr. Errol Morcock. Maybe you would want to continue the conversation with him. Ayushman is, of course, there. We'll also try and play out that phone conversation we had with Sergio Gore. But Zach.
Yeah, Mr. Morcom, thank you very much for joining us. So I sort of asked Ambassador Gore about this as well. There are a couple of things with the tweet that was put out by the president, where he has said that India has agreed to buy American energy, American technology, and $500 billion worth of American products, etc. Now, we've seen this pattern in previous trade deals as well, with the Japanese, with the European Union, with South Korea, where a lot of these companies, even governments, came to the White House and said, we're going to invest $100 billion, we're going to invest $300 billion. I think the Europeans committed to like $700 billion of American energy. How much of this is a play back home for the domestic audience, for the MAGA base, and how much of this will actually get realized in the next 3 years that President Trump is in office?
I would say in regard to this very specific topic, not a lot of it is for the MAGA base. The MAGA base isn't focused on international bilateral partnerships as much as they're concerned about domestic situations. So a lot of this is very real and very intended by the broader US market, as well as geopolitical interests that Donald Trump has in regard to reducing the oil price worldwide. By bringing that oil price down, that stops the Russian war machine. So I think a lot of what we're seeing is real earnest interest by the Americans to decouple from China, to pivot towards a bunch of bilateral agreements, but also as you see the rise of India, it's something that Trump welcomes, something that many Americans welcome. The MAGA base isn't exactly thrilled when we do anything with any foreign government whatsoever. The MAGA base is concerned about overdoses at home. They're concerned about rampant unemployment. They're not rampant unemployment, but in certain sectors unemployment. They're concerned about the border. So I think this is a really positive thing, and this is a serious overture by the U.S. government as well as the Indian government towards further cooperation.
But just to take this forward, I mean, at a time when there's this whole chatter about whether an American attack on Iran is imminent, does this now occupy the sort of front pages of the Western press? Certainly, it'll be on the front pages of all the Indian newspapers tomorrow morning. Just paint this in the context of the fact that this was perhaps one of the large countries whose deal America had still not signed off on, and now after 6 months of hard-fought negotiations, finally this deal is in.
I agree that it's going to make headlines. I mean, this is a historic international deal, but this is going to make headlines in the financial press. As far as the day-to-day 9 to 5 political non-sophisticate, they're not going to focus on this as a distraction from the imminent war in Iran. This isn't going to take away all the eyeballs. However, in the financial markets, in the areas where perhaps there can be volatile behavior that does affect people, they might see this as maybe this is getting back to normalcy. A lot of everyday Americans dislike the up and down that President Trump brings to the table as he, gives and takes, as some of your other commentators were talking about how he can pull back or change his mind at any time. So if we can finally get one of these last major countries online, we have a permanent deal, I think that's something that people are looking at positively, but it's not going to be distracting them from the imminent threat of war in Iran or some of the other domestic issues. This won't be playing to the everyday American as much as the Wall Street American.
Well, Rahul, just want to add to the fact that, the other big domestic story that's playing out in the US is on the Epstein files and the number of times Mr. Trump's name is featured there. So I guess some of that heat will go away as well with this big announcement of the India-US trade deal. So once again, I think we can confirm, and maybe we can play out that short interview with Ambassador Gore, where he's confirmed that India will now only pay 18%. The 2 sets of tariffs, the reciprocal tariffs.
Okay, I believe that we're still trying to sort of reloop that conversation. So we're just going to get that in just a few moments. But I just want to make one thing very, very, I want to point out one thing, which is that over the last 8 or 9 months, ever since we've actually had a bit of a dip in our equations with America, in a sense that publicly there has been a lot of sparring, President Trump, and I want to bring in Mr. Prabhu Dayal on that, President Trump has been very careful never to really come out and target Prime Minister Modi in any which way. His language has always been very warm and affectionate to the Indian Prime Minister, and likewise. And that has always been sort of characteristic of the deep bond that they have shared, going back to 2016 and even before. So quite clearly, their personal rapport hasn't suffered, even though there has been a bit of a grating come to pass as far as this relationship is concerned, Mr. Prabhu Dayal.
Well, you're right. President Trump always refrained from saying anything in the nature of a harsh comment about Prime Minister Modi. In fact, he always referred to him as his great friend and had very nice things to say about Prime Minister Modi. However, their relationship was certainly being impacted because of the tensions in India-US relations, which had arisen particularly because of the trade issues. And the fact that their personal relationship has certainly impacted the decision-making process which President Trump has indulged in, certainly is a factor. Their personal relationship is good, and President Trump must have taken that into account while coming down in regard to the tariffs issue and being more understanding towards the positions which India was adopting. Nonetheless, let us see what the External Affairs Ministry is going to say, because, for example, President Trump has said that India has agreed to stop buying Russian oil and will buy much more from the United States and potentially Venezuela. So, of course, India will buy more from the United States. It has always indicated its willingness to increase energy purchases from the US. But whether it will stop buying Russian oil, as claimed by President Trump, remains to be seen. So let us see how things play out. Nonetheless, the easing of tensions is a good sign. The fact that President Trump has agreed to bring down the tariffs from 25% to 18%, the reciprocal tariff, is very good because there was talk of the tariffs hitting 500%. So, as Mr. Sushant Sarin said, he'll sleep more peacefully tonight. Of course, I will sleep with some anxiety because I'd like to see what exactly the External Affairs Ministry is going to say about all this.
Okay, just stay on with me, gentlemen, because I want to play out that conversation that Zaka and Ayushman had with Sergio Gore, the US ambassador to India, who has, of course, been deputed by President Trump to paper over the cracks, really, the relationship was beginning to exhibit. Let's go straight across.
Ambassador Gore, many congratulations. India and the US now have a trade deal. Can you give us a little more details on how this was achieved and how this was arrived at?
Yes, thank you for having me on tonight. Look, all the credit goes to President Trump and Prime Minister Modi. Since I arrived in India about a month ago, I have said, and I truly mean it, that the two leaders have a great personal relationship. And that is something that carried this deal forward. The potential between India and the United States is limitless. And so I'm thrilled that India is getting this 18%. Which is a massive drop from the previous number. We have incredible deals ahead. And so, as I've said since I've arrived here, the best is yet to come.
So, Ambassador, if you could clarify for our viewers, India was paying 25% reciprocal tariffs and 25% Russian oil tariffs. The second set of Russian oil tariffs are now removed, so India just pays 18% tariffs. Is that the final rate?
That is correct. As you saw in the truth that the president wrote, part of the agreement is that all nations around the world stop buying oil from Russia in order to bring peace to the situation. And I know the Prime Minister deeply cares about bringing peace in that conflict, as does President Trump. So the number, as it gets finalized, will be that 18%.
What about on the question of Minister reportedly made to him? Could you walk us through that, please?
I will leave that to the trade negotiators. As you know, ambassadors don't necessarily have in their portfolio the trade deal. But overall, this is incredible news. 18%. There's a lot of demand. When the United States is open for business under President Trump, it's a new era. And frankly, from the start, we've said the president has a great relationship with the Prime Minister. A lot of people did not believe that. He truly does have a great relationship with the Prime Minister. And this is why this happened. Under President Trump's leadership, we have renegotiated deals all over the world. So this was not anything specific to one country or another. However, I will say that this trade deal is more favorable because of their relationship.
Significant statement that's coming in from Sergio Gore as he was speaking to Zaka Jacob, where he's not given out details about the other commitments that Donald Trump has talked about in his Truth Social post, but he has confirmed that the reciprocal tariffs have gone down to 18%. Ray Locker, I've seen in the American media, the Republicans have been struggling to sell the entire tariff regime to the American people. And this is coming with the midterms also right around the corner, given the fact that several experts, including the CBO inside the United States, has stated that tariffs are inflationary. Do you think this is one of his last-ditch efforts to try to sell the tariff regime, even though a lot of the MAGA supporters still believe him when he says that it's the countries who are paying us as he levies tariffs?
Well, unfortunately, those people are misguided. I mean, we're paying the tariffs. It's a tax on the American people. Every time there's a tariff placed on goods from another country, U.S. consumers pay that tariff, pay that tax. It's a tax that no one voted on. He just declared it unilaterally. And so, I mean, some people will take heart with this announcement. Many people won't. I mean, it's better than it was yesterday. It's a lower tariff than it was before, and that's a good thing. But, you know, I just don't know how much this thing tracks politically. I don't think it really makes much of a difference. As Errol said earlier, it's a big thing in the financial press. It's a big thing in India. The rank and file voter, whether it's a MAGA supporter or a Democrat or independent, probably not going to pay any attention to it. And I don't think this tariff regime is being sold very well because people are still paying higher prices than they were before.
Right. And Mr. Moorcock, I want to come to you on that point. The only tangible that's come out, which was even confirmed by Sergio Gore as he was speaking to us, is the fact that the tariffs have gone down to 18%. That's a huge deal for the Indian manufacturer. But at the same time, the other commitments that Donald Trump has talked about, $500 billion he claims Prime Minister Modi has committed to. He's made other claims that India will now stop buying Russian oil. India is dependent on Russian oil for a very long time, but he claims India will stop buying Russian oil and will buy it from Venezuela. Then the other statement that the tariff regime will come down to absolute zero over time. Now, these are a bit outlandish if you look at the economic realities of both the countries, but the only tangible is that the tariff has come down to 18%. Overall, doesn't it seem, as Wall Street has been pointing out, that Trump has, in a way, chickened out when it comes to this deal? As they say, Taco Trump.
In the end, the objective, of course, is to bring reciprocal tariffs as we try to onshore businesses and onshore markets as the AI revolution and automation come and basically make a lot of labor irrelevant. So his use of tariffs and whatnot is shown in the fact that the U.S. economy is gangbusters. And for a lot of people who are disenchanted with the tariff situation, they're obviously a little bit more dramatic than realistic. We put 20% tariffs on China in 2018, and the actual cost to the consumer worked out to be about 1 or 2% because you can't risk losing market share. Now, Trump wants to bring the tariffs down to 0% because that would be a reciprocal tariff on both sides, meaning American goods could compete in the Indian markets. So I think in the end, the goal here with the Venezuelan oil obviously is to abrogate the impact of Russian oil on the entire situation because the Europeans are buying Russian oil. Many people are buying Russian oil, and that's not helping us bring an end to that war. So he's playing in this sense, actually, it seems to be a little bit of three-dimensional chess, as overused as that word is. And I wouldn't say it's chickening out to bring the tariffs back to a reciprocal level when before, of course, the American exporter was facing no chance of entry. So we want Indian business in America, but we want American businesses in India. And that's what Donald Trump's there to make deals. Right. And with somebody like Modi, somebody who he respects, I think he's able to get that across the line.
Right, but we still need to see the fine print of the other commitments that have come in through the Trump social post. The other question, and the Democrats as well as other critics of Donald Trump continue to say that he's just slapping these tariffs. There is no congressional push which can make it everlasting beyond his presidency. It can all be undone once he stops being president. Don't you think that's a short-sighted economic policy?
Short-sighted because of the tools at large. As you see the effect of tariffs, and perhaps as we see the coffers start to fill, and perhaps the regular citizen who doesn't follow this gets a small tariff check, you might see Congress fall in line. Congress does enjoy using the citizens' money to bribe them. So never fault Congress for following behind this approach. Also, economically, the U.S. does need to use tariffs in a multipolar world order. We don't want to be the global hegemon. We want to focus on ourselves, and we have a lot of domestic problems. And other countries use tariffs, and hopefully we'll codify this into law as President Trump sort of proves concept in the situation.
It's like Trump's healthcare policy. I've been hearing about it since 2016. It's still concepts of a deal. We still don't see it. And the point is Congress needs to codify these things so that they have a lasting impact when it comes to Trump, if he wants to even leave an economic legacy. So Sushant Sareen, Prabhu Dayal, do you think that this is nothing more than just a temperamental push? Something that India has achieved is the reduction to 18%, but we are still in choppy waters when it comes to dealing with Donald Trump. Sushant Sareen, you first.
Look, not only us, I think the entire world is in choppy waters. Let's make no mistake about it. There has been a certain amount of capriciousness in the way the administration has gone about its business. Frankly, look, there are certain things that Trump says which are understandable, but the way you say it, the way you deal with your partners, if you are insulting to your, and this is surprising. What we have seen is that the Americans have, or this particular administration has been extremely harsh on its friends, allies, and partners, and not so much on its adversaries. and which is something which is always, at least in India, I can tell you, there was this sense of hurt. There was this sense that we were being singled out unfairly, and there was a lot of resentment in India. I think this trade deal will probably assuage some of that sentiment in India, which is a good thing, because I think at the end of the day, people in India, at least at the governmental level, have always believed that a close relationship with the United States and the rest of the West is in India's best interest, which is why the Prime Minister was always pushing for this relationship to be strengthened. Secondly, we are making a big deal out of this $500 billion figure. Listen, yeah, tell me, how many Boeings is Air India planning to buy? 400. Do the math here. Come on. How many Boeings or other aircraft is Indigo planning to buy? And I'm just talking about one industry.
But Sushant Sareen, the likelihood of them buying it is high, but the likelihood of India framing a $500 billion deal for American goods,
listen,
considering Donald Trump,
once again, Ayushman, allow me. Look, for example, when two leaders meet, what do they say? That our current trade between our countries is $150 billion a year. We want to take it to $500 billion. Are you going to take it to $500 billion in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years? No, what you are saying is you are expressing an intention to continuously ramp up your bilateral trade. And trade means that both sides are selling and buying from each other, which is exactly as it should be. I don't have a problem with that. There will be certain sensitive sectors in the United States where they would want to give their producers some protection. Similarly, in India, there are very weak sections which we would want to protect. And that is why you do a deal around that. So I don't have a problem with that. Again, this $500 billion figure has been floated by President Trump. But in what is the time period? Is it in 5 years? Is it in 10 years? Is it a kind of a graded kind of an approach? We don't know. So those details are awaited. But other than that, purely going on his Truth Social post, I think it seems to be a pretty good deal that we have got. And I think it's one that we can not only live with, but we can thrive in it.
Right, but without anything codified, without the details of the fine print. He's only got 3 more
years.
Yeah,
it'll all be codified. Now, you don't expect Trump to, send you the codified deal on his
but
social
I don't
post.
think Trump's even seen Congress to a great extent beyond the big, beautiful bill. I don't think any of his policies have gone through a Congress. Everything has been executive order, which can be undone like that by the next president. But Zaka, when we're talking about the domestic pressures that Trump is facing, clearly he's trying extremely hard to sell this entire tariff thing, saying that, like the other countries, they've been ripping us off for years and now they're paying. But clearly he has other issues at hand, not just the protests in Minneapolis, the ICE raids where Alex Peretti was gunned down, so much criticism against the DHS and also the Epstein files. Domestically, this will just be a blip when it comes to the firestorm he's facing right ahead of the midterms.
Well, look, there's simply no, putting a balm on the problems that he's facing domestically, whether it's the ICE raids that are going out of hand or whether it is the Epstein files. Remember, the Epstein files became, even before this latest tranche got released by the Department of Justice, it was the first thing that sort of split his MAGA base much before any other issue could. A lot of people in the MAGA base were concerned about, his name being there, what his role was, and whether there was a cover up and so on. Now I think 3 million plus pages or documents have been released, and yes, his name does feature in a number of occasions. But I think personally, he seems to have moved on from that. In terms of the trade story, that look, he has been pressing this as a big American success. Scott Bessent has been saying that the tariff revenues are something in the ballpark of $300 billion. So they are trying to project that as a win. But at the end of the day, the tariff